I mean, do I still win the draft if I have the best roommates, but there's no requirement that we live together for more than like 3 days?
Welcome to Drafted. I'm your host, Daniel Prentice, and as always, I am joined by my dear, great friend, Preston Thompson. Preston, how are you doing this week, and what are you drinking tonight, my friend?
I'm doing good, Dan. Better than usual, I must say, because
you're kind of down in the doldrums last week.
I was down in the doldrums, and I gotta say, I had a worse week this week than I did last week. That's true, certainly true. But tomorrow,
but you're good anyway.
But tomorrow, I get to come see you.
That's true.
Not to give away any hints to all the people who like to stalk us after hearing an episode or anything, but I'm coming on down. We're gonna spend some good old quality time together, and we're gonna play a lot of board games, and it's gonna be a delight.
Yeah, and even so this is our final draft of the season, but we are gonna do a season review show like we did to end season 1 last year. It'll be the first time ever that we'll get to record the podcast together in person.
That is wild. I can't believe that hasn't happened yet, but it's we're gonna get it behind us. It's gonna be great. And I'm drinking a Rapturous from Three Taverns Brewing, local in Atlanta, which I've drunk on the show before. It's delicious, but I'm out of beer, so I got to pick some up on the way to your place, I guess.
Sounds good.
It's my last one.
And we are we have that to look forward to next week. But tonight we are thrilled to have just an absolute gem. She's so good every time she comes on. I think she's the perfect drafted guest. If I were drafting drafted guests, she'd be my number one pick. And that is Katie Geer. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. It's a special episode, last draft of the season. We couldn't think of a better guest for it. How are you doing, and what are you drinking tonight?
I am so honored to be here, especially for the season finale. You always get your big hitters for season finale.
Exactly, you really do.
Tonight, I am drinking a Bodhisattva Ipa. I'm not really into IPAs, but as long as my husband is doing all of the shopping in the house, I drink whatever he brings into this household. It is quite delicious.
Well, that's good. And we're thrilled to have you. I myself am drinking another Shiner beer. I still have that sampler I got. This time it's a Ruby Redbird, which I don't actually know what it is. They don't really say. It just says Ruby Redbird with ginger and grapefruit. And it's kind of odd. I like both ginger and I really don't like grapefruit, but I feel like grapefruit beers are pretty good usually. But it's kind of weird. It doesn't really taste like a beer at all. So it's a little unsettling, but it's not bad.
I'll drink the rest of them for you.
Sounds good. You can.
Yeah, I like those beers that don't really taste like beers and have like 3 different fruit in them and like another thing that you didn't think could be liquid. Like those are often my favorite beers at breweries.
I think you'd probably like this one then. This one's pretty good. But Preston, what are we drafting? The final draft of the season. It has to be a great one. So what is it?
Oh, it is going to be a great one. Tonight, we are drafting the best sitcom characters to be roommates with. We're all going to cram into a house. We're going to live in a house of 7 total people, I guess. Including ourselves. And you're going to have to find a way to make it work. So we're drafting some big personalities here. Our list is a combination of the top 20 sitcoms according to IMDb, and then we've added in what we feel like were a couple big names that were missing from that list. So you've got like Parks and Rec, New Girl, The Good Place, The Office. And then you've got a couple smaller shows like IT Crowd, Marvelous Miss Maisel. We'll get into pretty much everything, but my guess is if you have something in your head right now that you think is a classic American sitcom, it's probably on there. It's pretty much since the late 90s, 2000s. Yeah. So like Cheers is not on there, Three's Company, that kind of stuff. I don't have a great reference point, so that's not on there.
Yeah, but basically, if you can think of like a major sitcom that has made waves, into the national landscape, so to speak, it's probably included on the list. And maybe there's some glaring mistake we've made. Let us know, as always, on Twitter and in the Discord and everything. But I think we have a pretty comprehensive list to choose from here. And our draft order for the evening is Preston picking first, and then myself second, and Katie third. And then, of course, as always, snake style. So Katie will have the first pick of the even rounds with the reverse order. But without any further ado, are we ready to get this draft underway?
Oh, God. I just got so nervous knowing I have the first pick. I really don't want to mess up. The first picks of our drafts always like set a tone, and it's hard to recover from. if you don't do it well, or if it totally ruins somebody's strategy, they can't get back. It's such so much pressure.
Well, this is a tough one for me. I think there are some drafts where you want the first pick. I don't know that this is one of them. I
don't know either. I'm not sure. We're gonna find out.
Maybe Katie has a different opinion.
I don't think I have ever been third yet on this podcast.
Well, nice. I'm glad to bring some balance there.
It's really throwing me because I designed my draft order here, assuming I would be at least first or second. And so I'm going to have to really think about who to pick first and second then if either of you take some of my top picks. This really changes my strategy. And I thought more deeply about strategy for this one, I think, than any episode I've been on so far.
I love to hear that. You know, the thing about drafting third is you can get lucky because maybe you end up with both your top two picks if Preston and I both honor this. Without revealing my strategy or my prep too much, I don't have any S tier people. There weren't really any characters that were like jumping out screaming at me as like, yes, this person would be a perfect housemate. Maybe that's my lack of sitcom knowledge coming to bite me. I think this is gonna be a tough draft for me. Compared to you two, who probably have seen a little bit more of these shows than I have, but we're getting too much into it. Let's just hear what the first pick is here from Preston.
Okay. I'm going to take a risk here, but I think it's so worth it if the audience can see why this is such a clear number one pick. Because if you're just asking me, and I'm not trying to calculate in the fan vote or anything, this is the clear number one pick. I am taking Janet from The Good Place.
Oh,
now, if you've seen The Good Place,
consider her.
If you've seen The Good Place, Janet is this essentially like God, angel. We'll call her an angel that is like a mix between like God and Google Assistant, where like she's always around when you need her to be, but not when you don't need her to be. She can make objects appear for you. You can be like, it's Alexa, right? It's like, hey, Janet. Can you make me some coffee? And then she comes back, she's got some coffee. And she does. And here's the biggest thing about Janet. She doesn't have an attitude about it. She's always so happy to have done this thing for you. It's so wonderful. I feel like she's going to be the thing that makes this engine of a house go. She is the house mom that you need.
You picking Janet makes me realize that you and I are on trains going in opposite directions.
This is how we were for the rom-com draft too. And for the rom-com draft, we were like so distant from each other too. So this is kind of becoming a theme, I guess.
I'm surprised from Katie. I somehow overlooked Janet, and The Good Place is one of the few shows on our collection of shows that I have actually watched like every episode for. I love The Good Place, and Janet is an incredible character, and also would be a phenomenal roommate. Like she doesn't even take up any space. She sleeps in like a teeny little box, right? Like
correct.
I mean, I can't think of a better roommate than Janet, if I'm being perfectly honest.
The problem with Janet is I would feel so stressed and guilty all the time. Like I wasn't carrying my own weight in the house. Like, everyone else would come in and they'd be like, oh, Katie, did you do the dishes? And Janet would be like, oh, I did all the dishes and I bought new dishes and I invented a dish that's never existed before. And I would say, I'm sorry, I forgot to vacuum. And I would just be a stress ball. This will come up later when I talk about my drafting strategy, but I think that would create too much tension in the house for me.
But see, this actually happens on The Good Place. And I think like the solution here is to be like, Janet, can you, next time you do the dishes, can you leave one dish for me to do? So I feel like I'm making a contribution. And she would be like, absolutely. What a great idea. I love you for having that idea. And then that would be the way it was. Like,
it sounded just like
I think
Janet.
The attitude of Janet is really what makes this go here. If you had somebody in this house that was like, by the way, I did everything you needed me to do, which is what bad Janet is from The Good Place. I don't want bad Janet. I want good Janet.
And the thing with Janet is like, if she's not doing all that stuff, then she feels bad. You know what I mean?
This is correct.
So I can see that being a real point of conflict for someone like Katie. But I think for most other people that Janet is like literally the perfect housemate. So great pick by Preston. And now I feel really bad following it up because none of my people come even remotely close to being as good at
none of the rest on my list do either. Before we move on, can I briefly ask a question here that I feel like is going to frame our discussion? Please. How do we think, we'll start with Katie. How do we think other people have in our lives perceived us as housemates? Like, do you think you're the messy one? You think you're the house mom? You think you're the one who does the shopping? Like what is it?
I am so far and away the messy one
Oof.
that just compensates, where people are still willing to live with me because I have a good enough personality and I plan on enough things that people are still willing to live with me. But one of my best friends of all time lived with me the first year out of college. And I would say that her personal traits, in terms of how she liked to live, resemble some of the more cleanly, obsessive people on my current drafting list. And she told me once that she and her boyfriend went to an art exhibit and they saw some art installation that was a naked statue standing next to a giant pile of clothing, huddled in the corner of the room. And her boyfriend went, "Look, it's Katie in your apartment."
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And that is what I think of. It's a fairly accurate depiction of me as a housemate. I am the person you yell at about the one dish that has been there for 2 weeks. And a lot of that and my own acknowledgement of who I am as a housemate plays heavily into my own personal drafting strategy as we go along.
Yeah, you have to be aware, I think. I am definitely a little on the messier end as well, but I think I do a very good job of like keeping it to my own space. I'm pretty good about, being on top of like the common areas and keep my own lazy sloppiness into my own area.
That's always good. I am also the messy one, but I've lived with people historically, not my current wife, but like old roommates from college and people after college that would make me look like a spotless fiend. Yeah. So I feel like I almost didn't really notice that I was the messy one for a long time because I was the bar was being set in a different place. But mainly it's I find my most joy when I find somebody to live with that I trust and just let them, and it's her, my wife in this instance, have all control over the space. For instance, this is not related to like living in a home, but my mother-in-law came up to me today during our family dinner and she's like, "Hey, your father-in-law is giving away these shirts. Do you want them?" And I said, "Ask Lauren." She said, "Well, no, they're right here. Look at them." And I was like, "I don't know. Ask Lauren." I was like, "I don't know if I will wear them. I don't know if they will look good on me. I don't know anything. Can you please just go ask her?"
The perfect
so
husband.
That's basically where I'm at in our current home situation too.
And I'm that person setting that bar so low that it makes people like you, Preston, think that you're the clean one.
That's clutch. I appreciate that.
Yeah, if either of you are ever, hopefully never this will happen, because both of your partners are fantastic. But it sounds like if you ever are in a desperate situation where for some reason you two need new roommates, you'd work pretty well together.
Well, maybe there's a forthcoming like housing crisis and the four of us live together in perfect harmony. And then you put some cameras on it and our sitcom ends up on this list 20 years from now.
How wacky would that be?
Boy, this was wacky.
All right. Well, now that we all know what kind of roommate we are, I am going to go. This is, like I said, there just isn't a clear top pick for me. So I just feel like this draft isn't going to go well. I feel like I'm going to make a lot of picks and you guys are like, what? Huh? What are you doing taking them there and not in the 6th round instead? But so for me, one of my big things is I love to eat, but I don't like to cook really. And so that I need someone in my life that loves to cook. And I was doing a lot of research and basically doing Google searches like best cooks like best fictional cooks.
Best cooks on TV.
Yeah. And
it was like Iron Chef ?
No. So yeah, I had to amend and get the fictional in there to get better results. But so basically the one recurring person who actually was eligible on this list is Monica from Friends.
This is correct.
So Monica is my pick. She was a top tier chef in New York City. She loved to cook. I guess I never really watched Friends, if I'm being honest, but apparently she always made Thanksgiving dinner for everyone. That's the person that I need in my life. She also seems fine, right? Like people like Monica. She wasn't like the crazy, horrible roommate or anything.
She does seem to be the most amenable of the 6, I would say. If you're picking anybody from Friends to live with of the main 6 recurring cast, I think Monica is the one because she seems to be the most in charge of the space, keeping the space organized, keeping the people in and out when they need to be, that kind of thing. And yeah, she was on my list for the same reason of like, boy, would it be cool to have someone who actually liked to cook in the house. So she was on my list. I don't think that's totally out of anywhere.
All right, that's reassuring.
It's a very strong first round pick. I switched a lot or debated having her in first round for myself versus lower rounds, wanting less of her cooking, but more of her cleaning in my roommate lineup.
That was another thing they said, that her kitchen was always spotless, they said, which seems pretty good.
Everything was spotless, and she was very intense about it. And the only thing that concerned me in picking her, and I actually probably would have picked her had you not just taken her off the board, was it within that show. If you have seen Friends, there are only a few combinations of the 6 friends who really cannot live together. And one of those combinations is Monica and Phoebe. And I am certainly more Phoebe than I am Monica in terms of living situation. So I knew that was probably not going to be a good combo, but I would have still picked her pretty high just for that cleaning skill. But the cooking piece, she's a professional chef in the show.
Yeah. I feel great then. My draft is good for at least one round before it falls off the rails, I'm sure. Before that, though, Katie, you have back-to-back picks here. Are any of those people that you were hoping to get at 1 or 2 still there for you?
Yes, I'm feeling pretty good about my picks. So I mentioned before, I'm a messy person. And so thinking about who I would want to have as roommates, I thought very selfishly. And I thought about the 2 main themes I would want to have in a house to make my personal experience the best possible. And that was people who would clean instead of me, and people who are really into antics, like pranks, funny, side adventures. And so a lot of my draft strategies around those 2 topics. So I'm actually feeling pretty good now with my first pick being Jim Krasinski from The Office.
Ooh.
Classic, very popular.
Jim, you said Jim Krasinski. His real name is John Krasinski. His name in the show is Jim Halpert. You've done some sort of amalgam. He's a method actor, and he's taken over.
I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice that was not correct.
It rubbed my ears the wrong way, and I was like, something's not right here. I can't tell what it is.
If I get to live with Jim Halpert, the Office character, but also live with John Krasinski, the very sexy husband of Emily Blunt, who am I to complain? I think that was subliminal.
That's a great combo.
Subliminal wish fulfillment on my part.
A Freudian slip, perhaps.
Yeah. Jim Halpert, king of the pranks on that show. From the few times we see his apartment throughout the show, it seems fine. He lives with roommates normally. And so I really want that level of like pranksterness and antics. And I figured that he, as a fairly prominent character from The Office, was also a very strong first round pick.
Yeah, people love Jim, right? People are going to see Jim and like it, I think.
So I had Jim on my list pretty high, and then I moved him down the more I started to think about it during my time fishing all day today. One of Jim's essential character flaw in his relationship is that he is constantly making decisions without consulting others. And I cannot think of a more challenging roommate quality than to constantly be making decisions without consulting the other people in the house. I think at one point, and I've only watched The Office once all the way through, so correct me if I'm wrong, Discord and Twitter. I think at one point he goes and buys his parents' old house for him and Pam without discussing it with her. And then at another point, he takes a job somewhere else without discussing it with her. And I think that happens again, like 5 seasons later. Like, that's not a great quality. I agree with you that he would be a good complement, but I'm waiting to see how the rest of your team fills out, because that's going to be, he can't be in charge of anything. Let's just put it that way.
Well, that is an excellent entree into my next pick. I think of this was my plan. This was my plan B if Monica got taken off the board, and that is Schmidt from New Girl.
Oh, interesting.
Great pick.
There's gonna be a lot of hijinks in this house.
This is a great pick.
Another clean freak, also a very good cook. So I have someone doing the cooking and someone who not only wants but has to have control over the household. So he's going to reel someone like Jim in. And Jim, I think everything you brought up, Preston, is a really good point, especially for someone dating Jim Halpert. I don't get the sense from the show that he really cares what's happening in his living situation. So I think he just wants to clock in and clock out. Perfect for Schmidt, who just wants to run the household and will tell me when to do the laundry, will tell everyone else when to do the dishes. He'll want to just do it himself. and I won't actually care. Unlike with Janet, I won't feel bad that he wants to do all of that. I'm the Nick Miller. I can sit back and hang out and crack a beer while he cleans the house. So he is an easy next pick for me.
Yeah, I did watch New Girl. It was so long ago though that I did kind of forget that Schmidt was like this weird kind of neurotic house runner as like one of his characters. Like my just the only thing I can remember about Schmidt was that he was, you know, kind of a weirdo, chaotic figure. But he really did just kind of have the lockdown on making everything neat and tidy.
I will say you have a house with a lot of people here. You're gonna get 7 total people. There is an episode of New Girl. It's one of my favorites where Jess, to try and spice up the house, Jess is the protagonist here, brings in a hutch to put in the entryway. It's just this nice little like accent piece. And he absolutely loses it. It is like someone has taken his brain and turned it sideways. So like, I think you're gonna have to take a lot of subordinates here. You've got the alpha dog. Like the alpha dog is there. Behind
Schmidt. Yeah.
Yeah, you need a lot of people who are much more chill to have this happen. And so far, Jim and what sounds like yourself, you're not so bad. You're not like off that train by any means.
It's also a question of like which Schmidt do you get? Are you getting like early show Schmidt or later show Schmidt? Because Schmidt undergoes a lot of character growth, I feel.
Yes, he does. I don't accept early New Girl as the final form of that show.
That's fair.
It's not as good.
I mean, do I still win the draft if I have the best roommates, but there's no requirement that we live together for more than like 3 days? Like we have
like a long weekend.
That's true. I think it's got to be at least a year-long lease. I think.
At least.
Otherwise, it's a draft of like who would you most like to vacation with, you know,
or road trip with. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a very good call out and a risk for me as someone that loves to acquire random furniture and put it in places.
Very quirky. He doesn't do quirky.
No.
You just gotta have your own space. You gotta have your own space that Schmidt isn't in charge of, you know? I think Katie could make it work. Okay. So my next pick here, another thing I would love to have as a housemate is someone who just is in charge of all the budget questions, all the finance. And so I'm going with Ben Wyatt here from Parks and Rec. That was his area of expertise early in the show. That was like what he did before joining Parks and Rec for the state of Indiana. He also, I think, is a man of absolutely no confrontation. So I don't really have to worry about him butting heads with any of our other housemates. He also likes to cook a little bit and just generally seems like a really good dude who I think will cause minimal problems and take on probably more responsibility than is his actual fair share, which is perfect for me.
We don't need to talk about Icetown, I guess. We'll leave that in the past where it belongs.
Yes,
but
please.
Ben Wyatt was on my list, and for the same reason a lot of people are, that a lot of times because of the nature of sitcoms, you have characters that are being required to show lots of patience in living situations. And there's like most of the season, he lives with
April and
Andy Dwyer. And
can you imagine if you can survive that?
Yes, you can do anything. And you're right. He very gently is like, do you think maybe we could get some plates and not eat off of frisbees? But it's not mean. He's not like judging them. He's like, plates would actually be more practical than frisbees. And he's like trying to convince them. So no, I think that's good. And having somebody to do the books is not a thought I had considered, but now am going to. But you definitely took the person that could do it.
And to clarify for all of our strategies and our goal, we are drafting the roommates that would make us the most happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Not drafting to make sure like maximum average happiness per roommate. Because I think you could put Ben Wyatt with most other sitcom characters on any of our lists and cause him insane amounts of stress.
He's not gonna like this. He's not gonna enjoy this.
But he's gonna bite his tongue, and he'll probably have an ulcer by the end the lease is up. But you know, that's his problem, not mine.
But he can do it. Yep. But you're right. He's not going to enjoy this at all. No. All right. Well, now it's back to me. Back to back. I think I'm going to take a theme here.
Okay.
I'm going to take relentless positivity. Because when I come home, I had a roommate in college who occasionally listens to the show. Shout out to Kevin. Daniel, I think you met Kevin.
I have met Kevin.
When I would come home and I've like failed a test from class or something, and like the bus wasn't there, so I had to walk the whole way, he'd be like, Preston, I'm watching Forrest Gump. Come take a seat. I've popped you some popcorn. And he was just like always in a fantastic mood, and he like lightened my spirits. And those are the kinds of people you want to live with. So I'm going to take Chris Traeger from Parks and Rec, who I think is the most like Kevin I've ever seen. I love Chris Traeger. Like I do think eventually I would find him annoying, but I think if I was very calm and I told him that, we could give each other some space for a time. I don't think he's super judgmental. So anyways, Chris Traeger.
The question that I have for Preston is, would you be able to calmly do that? Or would you like let it fester until you blew up at him and caused an entire scene?
Well, now we're getting into parts about my personality that I don't so much like, Dan. And I think we can do that on a different show.
Off air, maybe?
Time. Yeah, maybe off air, actually, would be nice.
That could be arranged.
I'm having fun envisioning the conversations, the endless, fruitless loops of conversations that Chris Traeger and Janet would have together.
I thought about this because neither one of them would want to say goodbye, so they would just be talking forever. Oh, it sounds so delightful, though.
It does sound very charming.
For a year and for limited amounts of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Limited. It's a good pick, though. It's a very good pick.
Okay, now I'm going to go with one that personality type is the same. I'm going to take Jessica Day from New Girl. Main character energy coming in, that's for sure. I think she's not always a fantastic roommate, but here's the thing she does bring to the table. She's really good at bringing everybody together and working stuff out. You know, she's got the feeling stick. So in the event that there is conflict, we will be able to settle it because we will bring everybody together and she will say, Janet, no, Preston has the feeling stick. Can you please hold on for just 1 second? And then I will get to say what I need to say to feel better. So I like this. I think most of her issues as a roommate will kind of be self-contained to her own storyline. So I think we'll be okay.
This is interesting to me. I think I would hate living with Jess.
Ooh, interesting. Why is that?
She's just like a little neurotic, a little off the wall too much, a little unpredictable. I don't think I would get along with her well.
But to Preston's credit, I think Preston and Jessica would get along very, very well.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
So considering, Lauren and I have watched through all of New Girl, and we do think that Nick Miller, Jessica Day is the most on-screen relationship we found similar to ours. There's an episode where Nick goes into his closet and he pulls out a shoebox, and in the shoebox is just all these bills from like indiscriminate places. That is very close to a real life situation that happened in our life that I don't want to talk about. But so no, I do think I would get along just fine with Jessica Day.
Yeah, I think I kind of have this problem with several of the New Girl characters. I think like I stopped watching, I don't know how many seasons in, but like I felt like there was a point where the show they all kind of became caricatures of themselves, like leaning into their most extreme character traits. That's when I started to like it. Oh, really?
That's the kind of stuff, because that happened, I think, in The Office too, where they leaned into the things that made them different from each other. And then again, I think that's what made them, and Parks and Rec too. So I think I watched probably for a different reason.
Interesting. I think the subtlety of The Office is what, like, there's a little more nuance in the Office characters. I don't know. I just, with Jess and Nick in particular, because they were doing the whole romance thing, and it just became too much for me. Both of them, to be honest.
Okay.
She's a strong roommate pick though, because she's quirky and she has a lot of really awkward, like, physical comedy things where she trips a lot and she spills things a lot. But she's still very clearly an adult. Like, she's a teacher. She's shaping young minds. And so you kind of have that nice undercurrent to ground her, where she can be weird and silly. And then if things get too off the walls, especially with Chris Traeger, she can go, okay, everyone stop.
Really?
Calm it down.
Mm-hmm.
And still relentlessly positive.
Yes. And this is what I have so far. My house is almost too happy. I now need a couple people that just exude anger or something.
Bring it down a little bit.
I need to bring it down.
Balance out the room.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to wait a little bit until the end of this next round. This is tough for me. I think I'm going to take Mitchell from Modern Family. Mitchell always seemed like the most level-headed of all of the characters in Modern Family. He also has great style, and I think he'd be a great decorator for our place. Easygoing for the most part, unless his family's involved, then it gets a little tense. But they have their own space, And I just think Mitchell would be a great fit, I think, for Ben. I think they would be able to like lean on each other a little bit and be strong for each other with any chaos around the house. So I'm taking Mitchell as my third housemate.
I don't watch a lot of Modern Family, but going through the characters list and doing my research, this was the one I probably would have picked out of the group. So this makes sense to me.
Yeah, like I said, I think he certainly has his character flaws, but especially like if Cam isn't in the house, which I don't want to break the two of them up, but if Cam is not coming, I think Mitchell is just a really good, easygoing dude.
You have picked the most neurotic characters from every show that you've selected from so far.
This is a good point.
So you have a lot of anxiety
really, you
going into this.
You think Mitchell is more neurotic than Claire?
I mean, they're related, so kind of same pool, but I mean, that's a good question, but still, even if he's second most neurotic, you're still bringing another high level of anxiety into this house. So this would be interesting.
Controlling personalities, yeah.
Interesting to look at, considering I don't really think neurotic or controlling when I think Daniel Prentice. So I think you're surrounding yourself with like a really high strung energy in this house.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean that could be a big part of that could be not knowing Monica super well. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Mitchell can be a little intense at times, but I think at the end of the day, I'm going to fill the rest of the house with people who can help him, cut loose a little bit more. Okay.
I'm excited to see how that plays out.
I'm pretty excited because I'm getting my next top two picks here.
Oh.
And I'm feeling good about how this is playing out. So my next pick, and I could do these interchangeably, but I'll do this one first, is arguably probably my genuinely favorite character from a sitcom ever. And that is Marshall Erickson from How I Met Your Mother.
Oh.
I'm a bit of a softie for him as someone who is married to a tall Minnesotan. Marshall Erickson is a tall, very sweet Minnesotan on the show How I Met Your Mother. And I think he's consistently in that show. They don't highlight the roommate-ness too much throughout that show, but he's consistently a fairly considerate roommate. He's a very smart guy. He's a lawyer. He has a couple cooking tricks up his sleeve, and he loves games, especially board games, and making up weird board games.
Yeah. How
I Met Your Mother is one of 3 shows in the list we're working from that I've seen 10 times front to back. This show is foundational. And so I know Marshall pretty well, and he was pretty high in my draft list, but I didn't actually think either of you would pick him early. Yeah. So I'm really, really happy to be getting him here in my 3rd spot. He's just a sweetheart.
He is a sweetheart. I do have him pretty high up on my list. He's in my A tier, which I am still picking from. But yeah, I mean, Marshall, easily the highest pick of anyone in the How I Met Your Mother realm, I think. He just is the most easygoing, the nicest, the sweetest, easily the most likable, and I think pretty clearly the most live-withable.
Out of that group, yes, for sure. Yeah. There is one episode where he does not put the lid back on the peanut butter, and that's going to be a problem. But assuming you figure that out, then yeah, there aren't like a whole lot of other red flags that come up. Loves to make breakfast for people. Another great quality.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about the lid on the peanut butter. Putting the lid on the peanut butter is not essential.
Excuse me? Hold on. Wait, hold on. I'm going to look behind me and see if you were talking to somebody. No, you were talking to me. Okay, no, go ahead.
What's going to happen to the peanut butter if you don't put the lid on it right away?
The same thing that would happen to any other kind of food that you just kind of left out and about.
No, peanut butter lasts forever. It doesn't rot.
You live in the South. You live in the South. Have you not had a moment as a kid where you come downstairs and you left something out and it's just like infested with a new colony of life on top of it?
Peanut butter is invincible. I'm on Dan's team here. I was actually going to just say I'm probably someone who has left the lid off the peanut butter. But But I really actually like Dan's take instead, which is you just don't even need to put the lid on. I love that.
Oh my god!
2 to 1 here.
I feel like I'm the only sane person in the insane asylum right now.
I will say, like, I put the lid back on the peanut butter, but like, if someone forgets to do it for a night or whatever, it's not the end of the world.
Totally agree.
It's just,
okay.
It's just not.
Well,
I mean, maybe you'll have like if you leave a jar of peanut butter without the lid on overnight in your home, and all of a sudden it's infested with ants, then you had an ant problem already. Okay, and the peanut butter just lets you know about that.
Just let you know, it's the canary in the coal mine.
Exactly.
That's the best argument I could possibly imagine in Marshall's defense.
Yeah, I think it's a great
pick.
Words.
I have
peanut
no
butter
words.
or no, I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, no, the pick is fine, but I'm just like thinking about something totally different now.
So to continue on my theme of antics, my next pick here is Chandler Bing from Friends.
Okay.
He was the one I really traded with Monica of who I would have picked higher. And I ended up having Monica higher, though she was taken by Dan. But Chandler seems like overall, and granted it's because he lives with Joey, who is just a flaming mess of a roommate. So Chandler looks like the responsible one, but I identify with that as a flaming mess of a roommate. I'm like, listen, he's going to make sure our bills are paid on time. He's going to make sure there's food in the fridge. And he is going to, along with Jim Halpert and Schmidt and Marshall, make up some really fun games for us to play in this apartment. Like, we are going to just have a really, really good time. I'm going to be laughing a lot. So I'm very excited to take Chandler here. I think the chemistry is going to be very good in this apartment.
This is where my lack of Friends knowledge really hurts me. I know very little about Chandler, so I have to take Katie's word for it. But I trust you've seen a lot of Friends, Katie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've watched all the way through, and I can vouch that this seems right. Seems fine.
He's not ever going to be the head of the household. If there were more chaotic people and it was just Chandler as the most responsible, he can't carry that burden. But you've got Schmidt making sure he's doing things. Chandler is a complete beta. So Schmidt tells him to do things, he'll go do them. I mean, Chandler in the show married an alpha in Monica and loved to just do whatever she said. I'm just creating that same energy in my apartment.
I did not expect Katie to bring out the whole beta thing on the show. That was an unexpected twist that I didn't know I needed. I like those picks. I like both those picks. And it's especially like, I mean, Friends is one of the biggest, like if you say sitcom, I feel, especially when you talk about roommates, the first one you think of is Friends. And then probably pretty shortly after is How I Met Your Mother. I mean, those are two just big, like roommate driven sitcoms. So I like both those picks thematically as well. But, since my last pick, I am really realizing that so many of my high tier picks are neurotic individuals. And I don't know how that happened.
Getting in his head, mind games.
You're like drafting 8 quarterbacks on your fantasy team right now. It's kind of crazy.
Hey, if I can start all 8, then I win. Sure. But like even the people that I've not picked yet, but that I have high on my list, I'm like, oh yeah, neurotic. Oh yeah. So I'm panicking pretty hard here. I think maybe this is maybe an overcorrection, but I have to do it, and I think this character shows so much character growth throughout her show. I mean, the whole show really is about her character growth for the most part, and that is Eleanor from The Good Place. And I think that Eleanor ends up being a really good person, really smart and thoughtful, but also is an absolute blast and would be a ton of fun. So I'm taking Good Place Eleanor, not shitty, real, still living Eleanor that sent her to the bad place.
Non-flashback. No, I'm willing to accept that. I think this is exactly kind of what you needed. You need somebody who was going to like crack jokes at all of the people trying to take control, but do it equally in a way that's like, I'm equally making fun of everybody in the room.
But like in a good natured way, kind of lighten the mood. Sure. And so I do have people ranked higher than Eleanor on my list. So if you criticize this pick, I'm pretty fine with that. But she just felt like the best balance to what I have on the team.
No, I like that.
Do you think Monica and Ben would plot murder on the third day, or the 27th day of living with Eleanor
Listen,
Shellstrop.
Eleanor has come a long way. She's come a long way, Katie.
But does that include doing her laundry?
Oh,
Yeah, that could be. But but Ben is just, he's so non-confrontational. I think he's just gonna do it. He's just gonna bite his tongue and do it. But I think if Eleanor can make a life partner for Chidi, and I defy anyone to argue with the fact that they are perfect life partners, or should I say afterlife partners. I think Eleanor can get along with just about anyone, because she and Chidi were basically, and still are, polar opposites in terms of the way they live their lives.
I think Monica could come around on Eleanor, considering who else Monica is friends with within the show Friends. She has a very high bar for chaos. So I think that she could handle that. It's Ben and Mitchell that I'm a little bit more worried about, but I agree with your strategy if you need to balance things out.
Yeah, I think Mitchell is the most likely conflict, because I think I see Mitchell like really admiring Eleanor at first and her kind of carefree ways, and being jealous of that, and trying to fit in, because he has those episodes like where I think like he and Claire both, where they try to be young again and they go out to the clubs and stuff. I feel like he's gonna relive that with Eleanor a little bit, and then realize like, oh, what am I doing with my life? And then kind of resent Eleanor a little bit. But I'm hoping that they can figure it out, and just their general vibes will find a way to be the yin and the yang to each other.
interesting. I like it. I think it's a good pick.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're back to me. Yeah. Well, I know where I'm going to go with one of them, so I'm going to buy myself some time here.
Okay.
And I'm just going to keep this train rolling. And
keep it rolling, man.
Potentially my favorite character that we will have talked about up to this point, but I recognize that she has a fatal flaw given the subject matter we were discussing, and that is Leslie Knope from Parks and Recreation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Leslie Knope, if you've seen her house on the show, is a serial hoarder. She does not really throw anything away. She has documents everywhere. Her house does not look great. In fact, looks pretty bad. But
is there a worse characteristic for a housemate than being a serial hoarder?
Yes.
Is there?
Making big decisions without consulting the other people in the home. Right?
I'm not so sure.
We'll come back to that. I think okay. This is the only situation in which I feel comfortable taking Leslie Knope. I am surrounding her with literally someone who has a superpower to organize things. I think, given the opportunities that Janet presents, Leslie will change her ways. Really. We don't think so.
That's
Your
a
silence is
strong
telling.
projection. Strong projection.
I'll be honest, I forgot that Leslie Knope was a hoarder.
Oh,
And
damn.
you saying that makes me retroactively more likely to have picked her, when all I was picturing was her professional life. And I was like, I don't need that kind of anxiety in my living situation. No way. I don't need that. And if I had remembered how messy she was, she would have been way higher in my draft order. But I think for your house, it's going to be a real challenge. But
Yeah.
Janet is
I
helpful.
think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be great. Janet is super helpful and basically makes it like a total steal. And like, you need a Leslie Knope around you. While Chris Traeger and Jessica Day are great, they're not always going to get done what needs to get done. And Leslie Knope will be that person. You will wake up one day and there will be new parks around your house, and it will be great. Like, she will get it done. And I think, in the later years, she does have a group of friends come and help her unhoard her house. We don't know that she went back to being a hoarder. Maybe she's evolved beyond that. I would like to think she has. I'd like to think Ben has changed her a little bit. So anyways, I still like it. I still think people are going to see that Leslie Knope pick and they're going to be like, the immediate things you think of are very positive person, knows how to get it done. And I think that's where I'm resting my laurels here.
I think even beyond the hoarder thing, Leslie Knope's endless positivity, as Preston described it, would drive me absolutely insane.
No.
I really think it would. I forget which of the two of you said it, but one of the two of you said you kind of. I think it might have even been you, Preston. Did you say that you have to have some negativity or sadness, or maybe it was Katie that said?
I'm getting there. No, okay. I can get there.
All right, I won't write it off yet, but Leslie Knope is going to be a lot to overcome in that regard.
Yeah, and I said we're getting there, but I really have no idea who I'm going to take there.
I was gonna say, I was like, you may be overlapping with some of my draft picks, and in which case they will be off the board. There's plenty of negativity.
Yeah.
Oh, you do have one pick right now. If you just want to go for the most horrible person available.
Well, I'm not. But I'm going with someone who it seems like likes to have a little bit more fun. And in the event that there is an accident, can help take care of people. And I'm going to take Turk from Scrubs.
Ooh.
I think out of all the Scrubs characters, Turk is probably the best one for this current situation. Does anyone have thoughts on that?
I disagree. I think there is someone better. I think there's one in particular who's better. But I think Turk is a good choice.
Okay.
Turk is a very good choice. Like, he seems like a competent, a very good friend, in it for a good time, but he's not so chaotic that he's going to throw off the balance of your house. I think that's a very good pick.
Yeah,
correct. I wanted to get across the spectrum, but not like way overcompensate and take like, Dexter from Dexter. Like that would be a little much. Dexter's not included in this list, by the way.
I'd be very curious to see how you'd argue that Dexter is a sitcom.
It's a situational comedy. I don't know what you mean. Man constantly finds himself in uncomfortable situations. There you go.
I do like the Turk pick, though. Turk is a great character, great guy. I think would be very easy to live with. Also
does seem like a good friend when you need him to be, but is not always in your face like some of the other people I've picked, like Chris Traeger, of like, what do you need? What do you need? Yeah.
He's just a good dude. A good dude. And I think I'm going to follow up with a pick in a pretty similar realm. Now, this again could be my lack of crystal clear memory of New Girl coming back to haunt me, but I feel like I remember Winston kind of being the glue that holds everyone together in New Girl, and he's kind of the most, I think, like relatable for a normal person. Winston, he never feels like he's the start of any confrontation. He's usually the one that kind of just is existing in the house and surrounded with everybody and tries to like smooth everything out. So for that, I'm taking Winston to kind of add again to that balance of my team.
You've kind of taken like a lawful neutral character here.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, I'm around. I will say, major flaw for most of the series, he works starting at like midnight. So he has to sleep during the day, which means he's constantly coming out and yelling at people for having fun at like 6 o'clock at night. So in that situation,
I had forgotten about that. What we'll do is we're going to get him a loft up in his own space, so no one's going to keep him away.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He has a couple other flaws that may impact your living situation, though I love Winston. He gets very sexual when he does puzzles, and often puzzles naked.
Correct. And he does them in the common spaces. It's a whole thing.
What does that even mean?
No, he gets very sexual when he's doing puzzles. Katie's right.
He starts doing puzzles and then takes his pants off and sings some sexy songs to the puzzles.
Other thing about Winston, he's not wearing clothes a lot. So sorry to interrupt you, but like just constantly not wearing a lot of clothes.
I'm not bothered by that.
His other big flaw is he is so bad at pranks that he either goes way too small or way too big. So either you will find like the forks in a slightly different arrangement in your silverware drawer, and that'll be the prank, or your car will be on fire, and there is no middle ground.
So I am not a pranker at all. So I'm hoping that I don't get into a prank war with Winston. I think Winston and Eleanor could maybe go head to head with the pranks, and then I think it would just be enjoyable for the rest of us. I think to kind of observe them going back and forth, as long as it doesn't interfere with the rest of us too much.
My favorite Winston prank is when he puts blueberries in somebody's cereal, and he's like, wait for it. Yeah, and then like the next day he like steals the tires off of their car or something. Yeah, okay. It's gonna be tough.
Okay, Katie, you now have your final two picks. It seems you've gotten pretty much everyone you wanted so far. How are you going to wrap up your team here with your final two selections?
So I'm having a lot of trouble with, I know who I want to draft as my final roommate, and I'm having a little trouble with my fifth pick. I'm very conscious of the fact I have drafted exclusively men so far. And I think that is not my fault, but in large part a fault of Hollywood for tending to create very anal and high anxiety like female characters, which is not who I should ever live with. But
fair, very fair.
I've been looking at the women in various sitcoms and thinking about who would I want to live with most or have as a roommate. And I'm going to pick Donna from Parks and Rec as my 5th roommate.
Great choice.
I think this is probably my weakest pick of the draft, I would say, personally. I think I'm really hinging on the fact that from everything I know from the show, she does not seem to spend a lot of time at home. I think she's traveling, she's vacationing with her boyfriends. I don't think she's spending a lot of like couch time with the roomies, which increases the likelihood that she will stick around for a full year. And considering that it's Donna, she has really high batting average per minute spent with her. She's fun, she's with it. You know, I think she's going to contain to her own space. And when she chooses to socialize, she's going to have a good time. You know, she's going to spend money, she's going to have an enjoyable time. And we already know she has a pretty high threshold for other people's antics.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is true.
So
yeah,
she's going to be my 5th round draft pick here.
I like this. And so I one of my very desperate moments of prep for this draft was texting my friend Nico, who's also a big fan of the show. So shout out Nico, since that's the theme of the episode so far. And she is the biggest fan of Parks and Rec I know. So I asked, like, which Parks and Rec characters would be good housemates? And Donna was one of her picks. And one little tidbit about Donna is that she becomes a real estate agent by the end of the show.
Yeah,
she would be able to pick you guys a fat house to live in.
Yes, she would.
Yeah.
I think there's enough pros this late in the draft where, like, usually this late in the draft, you can name like 1 or 2 good things, then you're on the right track. So I think this is fine.
Yeah.
She would be risky if I think I had her in my first 3, but I think for a 5th round,
it's a really solid late
she's
round
a strong
pick.
ad. Yeah.
I totally agree.
By the way, I would like to go head to head with Nico on Parks and Recreation trivia, just FYI. At your earliest convenience.
Nico loves trivia, so we can make that happen, I'm sure.
Excellent. Let's do it.
For my final pick, I wouldn't be surprised if people knew what was coming, but considering the fact I have gotten everyone that I want so far, I am going to joyously draft my king, the Lord, the savior of all sitcoms, Nick Miller from New Girl.
Oh my God.
This is
not a good roommate.
Absolutely my favorite character on television. He is a horrible roommate, but I think I have created an environment in my apartment that gives him the best possible chance of thriving between everyone else that I'm living with. God. Especially since I have Schmidt, his best friend, and we have already seen that they can live together for years.
Can is a strong word. Yeah.
I mean,
Schmidt does move out. Yeah.
They do. This is a first in the show. Katie, who is making picks for the best housemates draft, says herself, horrible roommate of Nick Miller, her final pick of her housemates draft.
It's true.
However, he is so much fun.
He is fun.
I think that he would bring the entire house up. He's proven he can fix things. He's pretty handy. So I think at a bare minimum, he could keep some things going. That's about all he brings to the running of the household. However, if I am thinking about my ideal living situation and I'm truly honest with myself, the first name that comes to the top of my list, and I drafted strategically to get to this moment, the first and only person I would want to live with is Nick Miller. Absolutely.
He would be very fun. I'm going to give you a big con, but then I'm going to give you a little pro to balance it out. And honestly, the big con is just that he's a bad roommate. But more specifically, I think he is very fun. I think he is very fun, but he's not very often coming up with the thing to do that is fun. He's usually tagging along. He's not the one that's saying, let's go out or let's do this thing. But the pro, bartender. He's getting
Huge
everybody in the
pro.
house.
That is true.
Basically a bar that everybody in the house can go to. And that's like a massive get right there. Everybody in the house having the same place. Because every sitcom that we've talked about, they've all got a place. You know, they either work at that little coffee shop, so they go to the coffee shop. You know, in How I Met Your Mother, they've got the bar. I feel like that's an important point.
And I don't need an ideas man for games and antics. I've got Jim
This is
Halpert.
true.
I've got Marshall Erickson. I've got Chandler Bing. I have the most iconic antics and pranks men on television. Nick Miller is good at executing on those. And so I think with him in the house, it's going to be a really strong value add. I mean, I could list the cons of him as a roommate. He does not wash his towels. He I think does his own laundry, does not pay his bills, sleeps under newspapers at some point. There's a lot of things that we would have to let slide in order to enjoy the benefit of living with him.
He's really an adult in name only, Nick Miller.
Oh yeah. But if I'm living my truth, this is the person from a sitcom I want to live with more than anyone else. And I've built my pyramid so that I could put Nick Miller on top of it, and I'm pretty happy about it.
I do like to remember
thrilled
that
for that for you,
earlier in
Katie.
this show, I did say that Nick Miller and I had a lot of things in common, and then you guys were talking about how he's an adult in name only and really fun but kind of dangerous, you know, interesting.
Sleeps under newspapers.
Sleeps under newspapers. You've been there. That's interesting. I like the pick though, just because I think he's very fun.
He's funny, yeah. And I feel like, you know, if nothing else, people will probably see Nick Miller and be like, "Oh, living with him would be so much fun," and then like the pick, you know, even if practically speaking, it probably wouldn't be great. Okay, for my final pick now, what I kind of am looking for is like house mom, because as you guys have said, you know, there's some potential over neuroticism, people maybe not getting you know, together all that well. So I need someone who is going to kind of crack the whip and be like, y'all figure your shit out. And I think there are a few good options here, but what I am going to do is I'm going to take Carla Espinosa from Scrubs, because I think she very much has that mother, keep everyone in line and off their bullshit quality, but also can really have fun. And it's just really just, I mean, like, if you want to talk about like best people in the show Scrubs, I think like Carla was my person when Preston drafted Turk, that Carla is just like objectively the best, most wholesome, put together, functioning human being on the show.
So I like this pick. I do think if I had picked Carla, it would have been bad because I already have some people that share those qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still glad that I ended up with Turk, but this makes a lot of sense for you.
Yeah, Turk
like
better fit for you, Carla better fit for me, I think.
Sure. Look at that. Look at how amicable we can be on this show. Isn't that nice?
We're all going to be winners this week, guys.
I will say Scrubs is one of those shows I have seen very, very little of. Like, I know who the main characters are. Like, I know who Carla Espinosa is, but I do not know that show very well. I saw it on our list and went, okay, Preston and Daniel must know the show pretty well to be adding it.
Yeah.
They're going to be picking from Scrubs much more than I am.
Yeah, I will say I highly recommend Scrubs, and I know anytime you hear anyone recommend anything to you, at least for me, my natural reaction is like, okay, I'm never gonna watch it.
Yeah.
But
Basically.
Scrubs is really just great. Like in high school, I absolutely loved it, watched the shit out of it in high school. And it even still, it's like it's a really good combination of just great comedy and also some like the sentimental, more emotional.
That's what I was gonna say.
moments.
If you like your sitcoms to randomly strike these unbelievable emotional
punch you
chords,
right in the
that's the one.
feels
That's the one for
in a
you.
crying
Let me tell
sort of
you.
way. Yeah.
Also, have heard from medical professionals that it is the most
One of the most
it
accurate
is the closest to
medical
the
shows.
reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed
Really?
to like Grey's
Mhm.
Anatomy and some others. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
I
mean-
think more in just the way of like the casual nature the show is, where they walk past and like, yeah, that person's not going to make it, and they kind of keep going. I think like that's the thing that most of the other shows like over dramatize and things like that. That's what I've heard.
I've heard similar things. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm closing us out here with the final pick of the draft.
Yeah.
right?
Final pick of the best housemates sitcom draft, which makes it the final pick of the season, Preston.
Oh, I know. Well, and because of that, I know we're running a little long, but I'm going to institute a drafted first here.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to ask for advice. I'm deciding between two people that fill similar spots. Do I take the one that I like more and that I think, if it's just me, makes this house just chef's kiss perfect?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that anybody's really going to recognize this character off the page. Or do I take the one that people recognize but has more central flaws that people could get upset about?
I think you got to do the one that's right to you, man. I think that's what the show's all about.
I agree.
Well, I'm going to do the opposite. Because I think after hearing you guys say that, I realized I was leaning the other way because I want to win, and I feel like I'm.
So he stops the show. He stops the show to ask for our advice. We both are in agreement on the advice, and he's like, "No, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do it. What I want to do."
I think usually I know how good my team is before we finish, and if I have a shot to win. And this week I kind of do feel like I have a shot to win, so I'm gonna go all in on the vote and not my own personal preference.
All right.
So we had an inaugural moment of someone asking for advice and then saying, "Get fucked, your advice is horrible. I'm going the other way already."
Yeah, now can you see why I'm going to make a great roommate to all these people? Okay. I need an instigator. I've got a lot of people who are very positive and who can take control of the situation, but are always going to resolve the situation. I need somebody who's coming in and messing things up a little bit. Because, mistakes are the spice of life, baby. Nobody's ever said that before.
They really haven't. They also have never said, you know what I need in the perfect housemate is someone who's going to start shit.
I need someone who's going to start shit. But listen, he always starts shit with the goal of making every night legendary. And I'm taking Barney Stinson. I think, again, Barney Stinson is literally on my tier list under do not pick. But I think I have assembled a team where he can actually thrive pretty well because I have so many people who are going to be able to recover and take care of and honestly not go along for the ride if they think it's a little too much. One of the reasons I have him in do not pick is in his house, he does not have things. When he lives alone, he does not have mugs, plates, or ovens or anything. But
he's not a materialist.
All of us, I feel like that problem's going to get solved pretty quickly.
He does have a life-size stormtrooper replica suit.
This is true.
So
this is another huge pro. He brings cool shit. He's just got cool shit. He has a Jor-El head projector in the living room. He's got a TV that's the size of the wall. There's a lot of cool stuff coming along with Barney Stinson.
I see a big problem with the stormtrooper outfit though. There's a 0% chance that either Turk doesn't put on the stormtrooper outfit at some point and do something with it, or Jess just has the most clumsy moment and totally ruins it and breaks it.
This sounds so fun. What are you talking about? You sound like you want to live in a public library. I'm trying to at least have fun with life here. And I feel like I have so many people that are very nice, but to be honest, they're not super fun. They're not used to going out. And I think Barney is going to thrive on having these people kind of push their limits of making memories together. And that's what I mean.
Barney's also very musical. He's constantly breaking out in song and dance, which is not surprising considering he's played by Neil Patrick Harris.
Who I would imagine is himself constantly breaking out in song and dance.
Yeah. So for you, Preston, I think that would be a very good roommate.
Absolutely.
I have to applaud this pick, even though I can name a million chaotic ways in which this would burn to the ground. But I love Barney. He doesn't have much stuff, so he's not going to be messy. I actually think your biggest risk is he is going to sleep with Janet, Jessica, and Leslie and drive them out of the house.
Oh, no.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a 0% chance he doesn't end up sleeping with Janet. The others are maybe a little less.
I feel like we can put some barriers in place. He never sleeps with Lily. He never sleeps with Lily.
Well, he does married to one of his best friends.
Think about it a lot. He certainly tries. He certainly tries.
Out the episode.
I think we can put some barriers in place. I am a little worried about putting Barney Stinson with a ethereal, all-encompassing being where he can be like, Janet, here's what we're doing tonight. I need you to get me 6 horses, some rope, and the Titanic. And then Janet's just gonna be like, okay, and that'll be in the yard. So that's gonna be an issue a little bit. But again, I think we have so many people here who can very calmly and collectively set boundaries and say after 9 p.m. is Barney time. And whoever wants to stay awake for Barney time can stay awake for Barney time.
I don't know. I think it's a big roll of the dice, I think. But that does conclude our sitcom housemates draft, and these are the teams. Preston ends up with Janet from The Good Place, Chris Traeger from Parks and Rec, Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec, Jess Day from New Girl, Turk from Scrubs, and Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother. I end up with Monica from Friends, Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec, Mitchell from Modern Family, Eleanor from The Good Place, Winston from New Girl, and Carla from Scrubs. And Katie has Jim Krasinski Halpert from The Office, Schmidt from New Girl, Marshall from How I Met Your Mother, Chandler from Friends, Donna from Parks and Rec, and Nick Miller from New Girl. We have so much more to discuss, but first, we're gonna take a quick break. All right, so first things first here, now that we're back in the second half of the show, and Preston teased us with his final pick of the draft, so I want to ask him first, who was the person you wanted to pick for your team but just didn't end up having room for them for one reason or another?
So I love Marvelous Miss Maisel. I think it is an incredible show. I think by the time it wraps, it will be like one of the greatest shows ever made. It is off to a hot start. It is fantastic. It's so freaking good. I would have either taken, obviously, the protagonist of the show, Miss Maisel herself, or Lenny Bruce, who is a real person, but is played in the show as kind of a period piece ad, but is constantly cited as one of the 5 greatest American comedians of all time. And it's just a very funny, raucously good time. So I probably would have taken the titular character just to keep it more name ID, but either one of those would have been fine with me. But I feel like a lot of people haven't seen Marvelous Miss Maisel. So
yeah, I'm glad you didn't make
it.
that pick. I would have had absolutely nothing to say. I've not seen this.
Well, you advised me to make the pick. See where I was confused in the moment? Because I knew you would be like this.
No, but if you had sold it, I wouldn't have been able to argue against it. I could make a criticism of your Barney pick. If you'd made the Miss Maisel pick, I'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great pick.
Oh, okay.
That is also one of my favorite shows on television. I thought quite a bit about how much I like Miss Maisel as a character and Midge and everything. And I realized that it would be probably too much energy for me personally in a house. And so moved away from it, but love that show. I think it's one of the best things on TV right now. So I think it's a strong one.
She also does have 2 young children, which is...
Yeah. Yeah, but travels a lot. Might not be home much.
Yeah, but she doesn't travel with her children, which is one of the
That's true.
weird things of the show. Is somebody's always watching the kids and it's never her.
And it's gonna be you if you live with her.
It's good. That's what I'm saying. It's gonna be me. So maybe I dodged the bullet there.
Katie, how about you?
I mean, I feel very good about my list. I feel better about my draft, than I have ever felt on this.
Wow.
podcast.
And I'm
very
pretty sure
excited.
Katie has won both times she's come on. So that doesn't bode well for us.
Feeling quite good. I think the only person I would have swapped in if one of you took Nick Miller, and midway through the draft, I was feeling pretty sure neither of you were going to take Nick.
Yeah.
But the other person who fills that energy would have been Andy Dwyer. I have a lot of reservations about him. I don't think he brings as much proactively into the house as he takes from the house. And April, I think, scares me, and I knew that she would be around a lot if I had him in the house.
Yes.
But I think he was the next up in my list of folks to come in. But beyond that, I didn't have too many other that were left off the list.
Yeah, I will say, I think if you were deciding between Nick and Andy, I think you made the right choice. I don't think I would
so
want to
too.
live with either of them, but I definitely
Yes.
think Andy would be worse than Nick.
Agreed. Can I mention one more that I was considering?
Yeah, of course.
This is like more of a joke, but I thought about it for way longer than I probably should have. From the IT crowd, Richmond, who lives in a dark, secluded room in the basement and is never let out. Mainly because I had him on the list because I was thinking, what if the house gets too crowded? Like
You just shove Richmond in the closet.
we need somebody who's comfortable living in the crawl spaces. So
Yeah, I don't know how many people would have.
Richmond.
I don't know how many people would have gotten that, which so I think it was
That's
probably
why I
Wyatt's
stayed
choice.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I stayed away.
But
But when you were
That would've
like,
been
when I
hilarious,
was
though.
drafting Chris Traeger and Leslie Knope, and you guys were like, yeah, you need a different energy. I was like, oh, Richmond's sitting right there.
Yeah. I think the real pushback, if you had drafted Richmond, for me would be that he's, and I don't know that we clarified this, but and I'm glad it didn't come up. We were all on the same page. We were all clearly selecting major characters, like main characters from each of the shows. I meant to clarify that, like, we don't want to be going off into like the minor character thing. I think Richmond is more of a minor character in the IT
I think
crowd.
so too.
He's
He's
not
a
in that many
cameo.
episodes, so,
I
yeah.
was a little concerned you guys were going to claim that Janet wasn't a major character, and you.
No, of course
that.
she is. Of course Janet
Okay.
is 100% without a doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, she counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I would have loved to have taken Moss from the IT crowd. I think he'd be like a fun guy to play video games with. But otherwise, I think it would be a really bad roommate. So I didn't want to actually take him. But I love him as a character. He's a really great character. And Katie and anyone else who has not seen the IT crowd, you should. Really, really funny show. British sitcom. I also really wanted to take David from Schitt's Creek, but once you guys pointed out that I already was like a little high on the neurotices, I couldn't do it. I couldn't also add David to the mix, even though
that would have been like when somebody brings you dessert and it's just a pie crust with all whipped cream on it, and they're like, "Have this pie." It's like, this isn't anything.
Yeah. But I think David is great, and like without some of the other people I'd already taken, I think would be a pretty good roommate. Even like definitely a little intense at times, but I think would be really fun too. And I would love to live in a house that he designed, just like in terms of like or decorated. I mean, I think that would be fun.
I feel like I'd love to see a house he designed, but anything you sat on would be like hard and all corners. Like you wouldn't be able to like sit on any couch, but it would look beautiful.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair criticism. But yeah, so ultimately that's why I did not take any of them. Okay, what was the worst pick? Who was picked?
Can I also just address an elephant in the room that I think will come up?
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
I think it is very interesting, but not surprising, that none of us picked any characters from arguably the most famous sitcom of all time. Seinfeld is number one with the bullet, the most notorious and well-known sitcom, and I don't think any of us were within spitting distance of that show.
No, never would have considered. I didn't even write anyone on Seinfeld down, and I should have. I do want to say I had an F tier, and my F tier was, and Seinfeld should be added to this, Michael Scott, Dwight Schrute, and then everyone on Always Sunny.
Yes.
And I think Seinfeld would fit into that same category.
I immediately wrote off Always Sunny too. Like Always Sunny and Seinfeld are both shows about
horrible
people that are inherently like flawed or not great.
Yeah.
And Freaks and Geeks,
Yeah.
and Arrested Development. I had those on my list as very prominent sitcoms that you would never want to even spend time with any of those people.
Not really.
I think Michael would be okay from Arrested Development, but definitely no one else.
I thought you were going to say Michael Scott.
No. Michael Scott was on my F tier. Was my F tier completely undraftable list. And Freaks and Geeks, I was surprised to see on this list. It clearly has like this cult following, I guess. And I tried to watch Freaks and Geeks and just didn't really get it.
It's when you realize that the list is put together based on the IMDb ratings, you realize if you've watched Freaks and Geeks, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's okay. It's more got this cult following so people can be at a party and ask if you've heard of the show that has all this famous people in it before they were famous. Like that's
the appeal of the show. Because the show didn't strike. I didn't even finish it. Like I was like, I just got tired of it. I was like, the show isn't that good. The only thing that's interesting about it is it has this crazy collection of people who all became big time.
Seth Rogen and James Franco and several others who I'm blanking on right now. But yeah, it's I've watched it most of the way through. It's okay.
Yeah.
I love Freaks and Geeks, and I think but I think it is the anti-Preston and Prentice show.
Yeah,
I don't think it has any of the pieces that either of you find enjoyable in a TV show.
I could see why people would like it. Honestly, I just didn't find it very funny. Like it doesn't really strike me as a sitcom. Really, it's more of like not a slice of life type show, but it didn't really ever strike me as a show that was trying to be all that funny, really.
Struck me as a period piece show. It was like, we're going to make a show about this specific age and time. Yeah. Katie has honed in on that. I rub the wrong way on shows that don't have a lot of redeemable characters in them. Like I will always prefer Parks and Rec over The Office, I think is the good analogy there. Cause I like having characters at least be like mildly successful because of their traits, not in spite of them. So, and I rub on It's Always Sunny for kind of the same reason, because they all kind of suck in Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I think I'm actually the same way. Like, I can watch and enjoy a show about unlikable people, but I don't fall in love with a show about unlikable people. Like, the ones
Sure.
that are close to my heart are the ones where you can see people trying and, trying to bring out their goodness despite their flaws. And those are the ones I fall in love with and rewatch.
Yeah.
Versus, like, I think my partner watches The Office much more than I do. And that has some balance of that, but that's harder for me because it doesn't have a Marshall Erickson,
Somebody you're rooting for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. The question was, who was the worst draft pick, and it's Nick Miller. So we can just move on to the next one.
Okay. I do want to hear Katie's answer because I'm guessing she's going to disagree.
I actually think, looking through this list, I think it's Mitchell from Modern Family.
Ooh.
I don't
Interesting.
think people generally remember who he is or any like strong characteristics about him. Like, he was
Man,
on that show for a
poor
long
Mitchell.
time and he was fine. But I mean, I even had to looking through, like, prepping for this, everyone's names on that show. And I watched that show a lot because I just don't think a lot of them are very memorable. And so I think that was a pick where it's like, it's just kind of a neutral in a household. And I think, even looking at our discussion about him, it was pretty brief. And so I think I would rather have a chaotic good in Nick Miller, who's really going to add to the house and detract, versus someone where, like, you could kind of forget he's living with you even,
Oh, see,
because
this
he's
is where
not
we
really
are.
having an imprint.
This is where we are just very different, Katie. I would much rather have a person be like, oh yeah, he lives with me, than a person like Nick Miller, who I would never be able to get away from.
I
So
agree
that's
with.
just, I
agree
think a
with that,
difference of what we're looking for in roommates, I think. But I'll take that. I mean, Mitchell was an inspired choice. I think it was me little bit leaning on like a show that I had seen and a character I actually knew. But yeah, I it's funny. I think each of your last picks were not picks I would have gone anywhere near, Barney and Nick Miller. And I thought it was especially funny because they sandwiched Carla as my last pick, and just really just could not be more on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Those your two picks and then my pick for the last round.
Yeah. Well, I prioritized my kind-hearted souls in the front end, so I needed to come back with just like a wild card, and I think I got one.
Yeah, as you said, you needed an instigator for some reason,
and I definitely got one.
You did.
I think. See, here's the thing, Dan. I think you're concerned about having the least bad things happen to you in this house, and I'm excited to have the most good things happen to me in this house.
Yeah, perhaps.
I think you're trying to avoid catastrophe, and I'm trying to embrace whatever's coming.
I'm shooting for a high floor. You're shooting for a high ceiling.
Yes, that's it.
I'm shooting for the most things to happen in my house.
Just most things.
Katie, so
Good and bad.
Katie's I'm shooting for a high floor. Preston's going for a high ceiling, and Katie's just going for the most walls, is what she's going for.
Most walls. Most turns and twists.
The most pencils thrown into the ceiling that may or may not fall at any time.
Well, so that kind of gives me the impression that when I ask this next question, we're all going to pick our own team. So, of course, follow-up question, who's number 2? But whose house would you most like to live in of all of the housemate selections here?
I definitely think I won. I think Janet is like,
Janet's a great pick. Really
Janet's
great
like a god tier pick. Like it's the 10,000 rats of this episode. I absolutely think so. Like, she is just so overpowered as a roommate. I think I'm honestly pretty evenly split between the two of you, but I do think Monica is a really like solid. I don't think Katie or I had somebody whose like identity revolves around cooking for the table. And I think that's a really good get. So I'll probably go with you then, Dan.
I'll take that. I like that. How about you, Katie?
Besides my own team, which I think is absolutely the best house to live in, I think I would pick Preston's. I like Jessica Day. I like Chris Traeger. I like Leslie Knope. You know, us hoarders unite. I really like Barney. And I also just think that I could not live in Dan's house having lived with a few people who are still my good friends, but have a neurotic energy, I think I would get so stressed in that house. I mean, me and Eleanor could live together and have a great time in the corner, but that's not quite enough for me. So I think besides my own, I'm going with Preston's.
Yeah, I think if I can't pick my team, I pick Preston's as well. I think the highest, like just for the high picks, I think the 2 picks that I like the most that were not on my own team were Janet and Turk. I think Janet would just be incredible to live with. She really would.
Yes.
It was a great first pick. You totally proved me wrong when I said that I didn't think there was an obvious number 1 pick. Janet, phenomenal pick.
And basically, if you're not following here because you haven't seen The Good Place, imagine the Disney Channel original movie Smart House, but good ending. That's basically what we're working with here.
Yeah,
like,
no
wow,
downside.
This is awesome.
No downside.
Yeah.
And Turk is just great. I think Turk is like, of all the people that were picked in this entire draft, would be the person that I would most likely actually be friends with. I think Turk and I would get along very well. But I'm really curious to see what the Twitter vote is on this one, because I have basically no frame of reference for what people are going to think on these picks. I really have no idea. So be sure to vote this week in the final draft of the season at DraftThePod on Twitter. Discuss the episode in Discord with us. That's where you can tell us exactly why you didn't vote for us, or why you did vote for someone, or who we didn't pick that we should have picked. It's a great time in there. The draft cord, as our own friend Keith Rayner dubbed it, and I really like that. But Katie, thank you so much for joining us. It was a blast as always. We're sorry it took us so long to get you on the dang show this season, but we're thrilled that you were our closer.
This was so much fun. I feel more emotionally invested in this set of 6 people that I will never live with, that I think I'm going to spend the rest of the evening quietly mourning that this can never be a reality. And I am going to fight hard on Twitter to make my case for my list winning, because I think anyone who has seen New Girl, How I Met Your Mother, Friends, looks at my list and goes, that is the apartment I want to be in.
I love it. It'll have to come another vote. And hey, they're listen,
that's gonna be really tight.
Yeah, penthouse.
That's gonna be so tight.
Penthouse apartment. You listen. There's got to be 7-bedroom apartments out there. Somewhere.
Donna can find it for us anywhere. She's got it.
If anyone can do it, Donna can do it. But yeah, Katie, it's always so much fun to have you. We love you, and you're a great guest. So we'll have to have you on for another one of our holiday drafts. I'm sure we'll have you on for one of those.
That would be wonderful. I'm ready for any Christmas themes part 2.
Yes, perfect. It's booked. There you go. Christmas guest taken care of. And Preston and I will be back next week. We're going to take a look back at all of the episodes from the season, review who won the episode, or won the drafts, or won the polls. That's the word I was looking for. Talk about what picks we regret and all that kind of thing, and just have fun looking back on season 2 of Drafted. Holy cow. And thanks so much to everyone who's supported us on Patreon. You guys can still do that if you want. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram. You guys know where to find us. But otherwise, we'll talk to you next week.
Do you guys think we could draft Disney Channel original movies? Is there enough of an audience base for that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely enough of an audience. I would have to do a lot of